Greetings gastronauts, this is KeefCooks, I'm Keef, and today I'm going down under. I'm going to do an Australian meat pie floater in pea soup. This came about the other day when I was doing a live stream, and somebody called Ricky Not a Camel, who comes from Adelaide, South Australia, he was asking me if we have minced beef pies in the UK, because he kind of had an idea that we didn't, and that people think it's weird. In actual fact, of course we do, and we think it's wonderful. And then we got talking about meat pie floaters, which I thought were possibly mythical, because you may know I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett and his Discworld series, and he wrote a book called The Last Continent 4X, which is, you know, a little bit based on Australia. And in it, there's a version of the very bad pie maker CMOT Dibbler, who's called Fair Go Dibbler. And he sells pie floaters. So it's a pie containing possibly named meat, if you're posh, floating in pea soup, which seems to be just a slightly runnier version of mushy peas, and also a dollop of tomato sauce, ketchup. So yeah, Ricky Not a Camel confirmed that it is indeed a thing, and Rick Bear on the live stream requested that I do that as a video, and I think, wow, that'd be great, because you know I love pies anyway, and I love mushy peas, so it's win-win-win for me. So let's get on with it. If you enjoy this video, give it a like, share, subscribe, etc. And yeah, meat pie floater, pea soup. I'm making the pea soup first because that takes longest. You need this kind of peas, marrow fat peas, also known as blue boiler peas, I think, in Australia, also known as field peas elsewhere. They're just normal peas that have been left out in the field to dry, and, you know, they're hard. So you have to soak them before you can use them. Normally I would do that overnight, but this package actually says 2 hours, so, well, we'll see. I'm going to use half this pack, so that's 250 grams, which will be plenty for me and Mrs. KeefCooks, and a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, and some boiling water. So I'll weigh out the peas. I used to work in a factory that made these in Sheffield, England. So that's a clue for anybody wanting to know who it was. The things that went on. Tip your drained peas into a bowl and cover them generously with boiling water, and then stir in 1 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And we'll set these aside for 2 hours at least. Now we'll start the pie filling. So the ingredients are 500 grams of minced beef, a medium onion, half dozen optional mushrooms if you like, or if you don't like, don't. A small handful of parsley, a couple of bay leaves, and plenty of ground black pepper, and salt if you need it, but you might not. I've got about 300 ml of chicken stock, homemade chicken stock, which is a bit wibbly wobbly and has a wonderful mouthfeel. And people quite often, you know, I quite often use chicken stock in a beef dish, but also with something beefy to beef it up. So usually Marmite yeast extract, but because we're doing Australian, Vegemite, mate, innit? So first thing to do is cut up the onion and the mushrooms and the parsley. So top and tail the onion. And peel it. And slice it. And dice it. Now the mushrooms, just cut the stalks off and quarter them, depending on how big they are, and you know, if they've got any dirt on them, just brush that off. And we'll finally chop the parsley. Obviously you can use dried parsley if you haven't got any fresh. Right, cooking. Get yourself a heavy bottom frying pan or one of these cast iron thingies. Chuck a load of oil in and heat that on medium-low heat. Drop a bit of onion in to test the temperature. When the oil around it starts to sizzle, add the rest of the onion and just let that gently cook for about 5 minutes till it's soft. And maybe a bit brown, that'd be okay. Now add the minced beef and break that up and get it browned all over. Then add the mushrooms, cook those for 3 or 4 minutes. And then add the stock and the yeast extract and the parsley and the bay leaves. Stir those all together, bring them to the boil. If you need more liquid, add more water. So let it cook for 10 minutes and then add the pepper and taste it. And if it needs salt, add some now. So it did actually need quite a bit of salt and also a little squeeze of tomato puree. And then put the lid on and let that cook for anything from half an hour to 2 hours or 3 hours even. I think mine's only going to get half an hour. Now the pastry, if you buy a shop bought pie, it will almost certainly have puff pastry or flaky pastry on the top. I'm not a massive fan of that, but as a concession to this type of pie, I have bought some puff pastry. I have made my own in the past. I'll put a link to that recipe somewhere, but I'm not making my own today, and I'm not using that for the bottom because short crust or hot water pastry is better. So I'm making hot water crust pastry for the bottom. I've got 400 grams of plain all-purpose flour, 100 grams of lard, 100 grams of butter, a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of cider vinegar. So the fat, you can use all lard or you can use all butter, and if you've got a problem with lard you can use shortening or anything that's solid at room temperature. Right, oh, and 200 ml of water. What we need to do is melt the fat into the water. Now stir the salt into the flour. Okay, it's all melted, so I'll add half of it to the flour. Oh, and the vinegar. This is a new thing I'm trying out. People say that it makes your pastry a bit more tender. So, we'll see. Stirry, stirry, mixy, mixy. And add the rest. You might need to get your hand in to incorporate the final bits. Now we'll wrap it in a plastic film, stay to this box, and set it aside to cool down to room temperature. Alright, the minced beef filling is ready. The sauce, the gravy, is a little bit runny, so I'm going to make a slurry of equal parts flour and water. And we'll add that into the gravy and let it warm up, heat through, cook through. And doing it this way stops the flour from forming into blobs and messing up the gravy. And then we'll dig out the bay leaves, because nobody wants to eat a whole bay leaf, and transfer it to a cool vessel and a little saucepan that's not hot, and set that aside so that the filling cools completely. Now I'm going to make the pea soup. So I'm doing it the traditional way by starting off with, well, like a mirepoix of onion, carrot and celery, chopped very fine. In fact, I'm going to grate them in the food processor. And the onion. And then we've got all this stuff on the top to deal with manually. I won't bother showing you that. So get a heavy bottom pan and melt a blob of butter in it, and then add your little veggies. Turn it down as low as you can. Stir it to get everything covered, and then put a lid on it and leave it for 10 minutes. Now I've drained the peas and I'm going to add them to the sweated vegetables along with a bit more of that chicken stock from earlier and some fresh water. And we'll just bring that to the boil, put the lid on, let it simmer for Well, it needs to cook about 50 minutes to an hour, but you know, we'll check after half an hour, see how it's getting on. Finally, time to make the pies. So I've got the pie dishes. These are about 10 centimetres across. I'm just going to do 4 of them in this batch, but I will have a lot more pastry left over, I think. And this is about the same size, and that'll be a cutter for my lids. So I've got the puff pastry for the lids. There's some flour on the worktop. Take that half of that. And roll it. There we go. So set those aside, and now we'll do the bases. Take about half of that. Still a bit warm. Should be okay. That will do too. I've oiled the inside of these and plenty of flour on the side that's going to be in the tin, and then get another tin and just press it down and trim around the edge. Like that. I'm just going to fill my pies. Okay, and there's some left. Enough for 2, I should think. So actually I'm going to make up another 2 pies. Now I'll finish off the pies. So I'm going to use my fabulous lattice roller just to make some cuts in these puff pastry bits. But I'm not going to pull them out and do a proper lattice. As they expand in the oven, they should do something interesting. So to put the lids on, I'm just going to moisten the rim with water. I'll grab a lid and just press it down around the edge. I'm going to make up some egg wash, so that's 1 egg beaten with a little milk. So just paint them all over with the egg wash, get a nice smooth even coating if you can. And now will be a good time to preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius for a fan oven, convection oven. That's 200 for a conventional one, and that is gas 5. Oh, they look good. So they go in the oven for 35 minutes. This is the pea soup after 1 hour. The peas haven't given in yet, they're still quite hard. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll add quite a bit more water to that. I'm going to stick it in the pressure cooker, and that should change things, we'll see. The pea soup's had 10 minutes under pressure, so let's open it and see what we've got. The pressure cooked pea soup, it has given in, the peas have disintegrated, but now it's too runny, so I'm going to boil it rapidly to reduce, to get rid of some moisture and thicken it. And also I'm going to add some frozen peas to make it greener and more pea-like. Now the pies have had their 35 minutes, so I'm going to take them out and see what we got. Ooh, we got pies. I'll let those cool down for a few minutes, then I'll get them out of the tins and put them on a wire rack. And here we are with our pie floater components. The pea soup, I cheated in the end. I liquidised it with a stick blender to get rid of the garden peas because they just wouldn't go. They weren't, they wouldn't cook down, or not in time. Legend has it you put your pie in upside down. I'm not doing that because these are beautiful pies and I don't want to, have them disappear. So there we go. Will it float? Accompaniments basically tomato sauce, which I assume is the same as tomato ketchup, but I could be wrong. Oh, look at that. I didn't expect that to happen. I'm not a massive fan of ketchup, but on this occasion I'll make an exception. And now it's taste test time with me. Mrs. KeefCooks, well, she's still at work and she said she didn't want to do it because she'll be too tired. And this may go on indefinitely. Right, anyway, this looks grand. Yeah, nice pastry, which is a bit, you know, the vinegar in it has made it a little bit more tender, I think. No wrong with that. And some thick pea soup. Oh yeah, that's interesting. I'll try a bit with the ketchup. Actually, I quite like it with the ketchup. It gives it a bit of zing, bit of sweet, bit of vinegary-ness. Meat pie floater. Go to Adelaide, get drunk, get one from a street cart. Or not, because now you know how to make your own. And yeah, it's grand. So, thanks for watching and see you next time.